Hey, welcome back everyone. Another new deck profile. Of course, it's Stokia. We got Lianorn Masque. I finally got enough testing to where I figured out where exactly I want this deck to go and how what I wanted it to play. So we'll just go ahead and get into the deck profile real quick. It's a very fun version of Lianorn. I did like the older version a little more because I thought it was funnier, but this does feel very good to play. Our ride line is going to be a very different one. It's not the Lianorn ride line. We're going with the Roa ride line. And the reason we want this is because it saves you soul and it makes you free boosters. So that's really important in the deck. We have a lot more aggressive like main attackers. So if I don't draw, like if I draw one extra booster, like that's fine. I can make that work. So that's why I like that, and it saves souls for one of our big combo pieces, which I'll show you when we get to the Great Twos. And lastly is Lianorn. Ooh, no, not there. There we go. Lianorn, if you're stuck on her for a turn, it's fine. It's not horribly bad, even though the deck's not designed to be be as much on this one anymore. But uh, you just spend a turn, getting your triple drive, and the next turn you go into Lianorn Mask and you try to pop off. And yeah, you only, I guess I could get into that when I get to the grade threes. Oops. So grade threes is a very small lineup. So I'm playing 4 copies of Lianorn Mask and 2 of the masks that go with, all the mask units. So I've described this in the Zorga build, so I won't spend too much time on it. Basically, check top 5 for Lianorn Mask or Depth Welly, add 1 to hand, and then if it's in your drop, put it into your soul to ride a mask unit on top of a non-mask unit, and then if your opponent's at grade 3, you get a Persona ride. Really good. You only need 2 copies in this variant. I think the only decks that really care about having multiple copies is something like Drajuled or maybe Unica, maybe. But onto the star of this deck, it's Lianorn Masks. So it has a really good ability where you can remove a Lianorn from the fight, from your hand, soul, or drop, to call back a grade 1 from your drop and then kill one of your opponent's rear guards. It's kind of like an Ashley reverse effect if you guys remember the original Ashley reverse from like, is it like 7 years, 8 years ago? But it's a very nice skill. I don't play more copies of the regular Lianorn just because I normally only want to do it once. Like I'd rather put more good stuff in the deck than kind of more bricks in the deck. And her other ability is when you're you can when she swings, you can boost her with 3 units. So kind of like how the original Lianorn was. And then at the end of the battle, she was boosted with 3 or more units. You can counterblast 1 and pick 2 of your rear guards and stand them. So it's a 5 attack deck, or it can be a 4 attack deck, depending on if your opponent's hit hover triggers. So very, very solid. It's just kind of the original Lianorn was more like a high risk, high gamble, like try to hit triggers. This one's just kind of a very straightforward go into a beatdown strategy. Uh, Not a lot to say on it besides this deck is very fun. Going on to the grade twos because we do play like a decent bit of those guys. So 4 copies of Depth of Welly. If you saw the Zorka profile, I talked about how you only needed 1 because you had Blade Shadow Cloak. Well, Shadow Cloak doesn't necessarily work in this deck, so we want to optimize how often we are seeing the mask. So when you think about it, it's like I'm playing 6 copies of the mask, which is kind of nice, with 4 of them having like a shield value to them. It also makes the Dragon Tree marker, which does make the deck hit a little harder. So that is very nice. If you want to cut this to 3, you can, but I have been enjoying 4 so far. The main card is my boy Tideline Dragon. Now, Tideline Dragon is an insane card in probably just this deck, but he has the ability, if you Persona Road, you can Soul Blast 1 to give him and another unit 10k. So this is where the soul part is kind of necessary because you're kind of like dream board without like the back row, obviously, because we'll get into the back row when we get there. You just want one of each of these, and then Lianorn. These are gonna maybe go over this way. No, this way. There we go. Uh, this one's gonna pump the other one by 10k and himself by 10k, and then this one's gonna pump up this one by 10k and himself by 10k. On your first persona ride, this is gonna hit for they're gonna hit for 40 each, which is insane numbers. Pretty much your opponent's going to have to hit like 3 defensives or an over trigger to like stop that. So that is like kind of the main combo or like the what you really want to get. Obviously, you're not going to have 2 every time, but when you do, it feels insane. And then lastly, of the grade 2s, it's a very interesting choice. I'm playing 3 of the new Love Binding Maiden Margaret. So she has a really cool ability, which is when she's discarded during your ride, you Soul Blast 1, tuck her to the bottom of the deck, and draw a card. So I'm a big fan of things that make your riding up process a little easier. I don't like I normally don't like the big minuses that you take from riding up. So this is kind of right up. These cards have been right up my alley so far. And she also has the another ability, which is the reason why we run her. It's also a Persona Ride ability. It is at when she is placed, if you Persona Road, you counterblast 1. Your opponent's rear guards can't intercept and they can't stand until their next turn. So why is this important? So one, you depending on what your opponent has, you're normally taking like 10k shield away from them, which isn't a lot, but it does help. So you can keep the beat down going, and also if you play against Ava, which Ava is a very popular deck, they have 2 Obfuscate Aids up in front, and then you're just like, hey, they do nothing now. And then, your opponent's like, oh, great, well, at least they can swing next turn. And then they find out that they're still, that the units are still tapped. They can't do anything. It's just a very nice, like, kind of controlling the board aspect. Yeah, you don't really need to play like a bunch of her. I like 3 just because I want to at least like see her for one turn if I can. Because once you see one, you don't really need the rest. Like you don't need to call 2 of these and counterblast 2. You just need to counterblast 1. But yeah, it's a very powerful card. I can see this going up in the future. So I think it's a very insane card. And that is it for the grade 2s. Now the grade 1 count is it's a little wacky, right? So I'm just going to start with the easiest thing that we can talk about, which is the 1 Elementaria and the 3 Perfect Guards. You should be playing 4 Perfect Guards so that you are not dying to things. That's just how the format kind of is. And if you don't have Elementaria, you just play another copy of this. It's the same thing realistically. Going on to the rest of them, I'm playing 2 copies of Diantha. So having Grave Recursion is just kind of nice. The counterblast isn't super heavy in this deck, as long as you're like managing your resources pretty alright. So having her is always good, just a good option. And also she's a 13k beater, which is very important because sometimes you'll have a decent bit of grid 1s in hand, and they all hit for like nothing. So she hits for 13 by herself. If she's on a Dragon Tree marker, she hits for 18, so it's pretty good. And I don't know why the camera went weird there, but yeah, that's gonna be it for her. 2 copies of Prosper. Now, here's the thing about Prosper. I know Prosper is a pretty insane card, right? So when he's placed by your Vanguard's ability, you Soul Charge 1, which is very nice. The deck likes Soul. And then when he boosts, if your Vanguard is a Lianorn, you give something in the same column 5k. Again, very good. I don't really have to explain why that's really good, like in this deck, because you're going to be boosting with this, giving the thing in front 5k for its next swing. It's just very nice. The issue is I'm finding trouble getting the extra space for another one because I mean, I could cut the one extra Margaret, but I have been liking 3 a lot recently. And the other grade ones I like at the ratios I have them, so I don't know. It just seems like a very good spot to keep it at. So if you find when you're testing this deck and you find that you want to play something, different than like you want to play one more copy of that, uh, you know, just go ahead and don't feel bad. I just personally can't find what I want to. Only 3 of the burrow mushrooms, so I've seen some people play 4. I only like 3, and the big reason I like 3 is because once you see a couple of them, or at least one, it's kind of not necessarily dead, but it is kind of dead, right? Because it's only a 6k booster. Yes, it puts in soul and gets you 2 plant tokens, which is kind of nice. Lets you have that early game, but 9 times out of 10 they also just get used as discard fodder because I have a decent time keeping up with the soul. So I think it's fine to only play 3 copies of it, and then 2 copies of I think her name's Amalia. Uh, so she's a new card, and she's really good. She has the ability that at the end of a battle, she boosted, or when she boosts, she gets 5k if your Vanguard's Lianorn Masque, and then at the end of the battle, you can Soul Blast 1 and retire her to countercharge 1. The Counterblast isn't insane in this deck, but you can definitely use a bit, so it's always nice to have a countercharging option, and I think she is just kind of, a good slot for that. I wouldn't say you need more than 2. If you think you need more than 2, I mean, knock yourself out, but I think 2 is the perfect number for this deck. And the trigger lineup, we have 1 over trigger because the over trigger still exists. We have 8 critical trigger. This is a very aggressive deck, so you want to be aggressive. 3 copies of the draw trigger. Fronts do make sense in this deck, but the issue is that you lost the extra drive check that Lianorn used to got when you got boosted by 3 in exchange for standing 2 rear guards. So you still want to be able to draw cards in this deck. So as much as the front would be, very powerful in this deck, it's just not worth it. And then 4 copies of the heal triggers. Obviously, you're always playing heals, and I still don't like any of the effect heals, so I'm not going to bother running them, at least until I'm given like a very good reason to. And yeah, that's it for the deck profile. Um, it's a very straightforward kind of beatdown deck. It's very fun. I love this deck a lot. Obviously, not as much as I love playing Zorga, but it's a very fun deck that you can mess around with. So if you guys like this, be sure to like, comment, subscribe. I'm going to catch you on the next one. Peace.